Unit 1, Lesson 1 vocab, point, line, plane, collinear, coplanar, intersecting, and parallel lines. The first three terms, point, line, and plane, are referred to as undefined terms. That will be discussed more in class. Pause the video as you need throughout this recording and others so that you can write down the things that you need to. For each term, you need to define it, draw it, and notate it. Point. A point indicates a location and has no size. A point has no dimension. Here's your drawing. When we talk about writing it, when we talk about naming it, we refer to it as the notation. So how you name it, notation, same thing. So if we're looking at something, when we draw it, it's a point. We notate it with a capital letter. So we can call it A. You don't need point A. We're assuming that anytime you use a capital letter, you're referring to a point. Line. A line is represented by a straight path that extends in two opposite directions without end and has no thickness. A line contains infinitely many points. A line has one dimension. Think about it as having length. Lines have length. They have an infinite number of points throughout, and they do extend forever in both directions. When we talk about drawing a line, we have a straight line with arrows on either end. All right, when we talk about naming a line, there are two different ways that a line can be named. The first of which is referring to it as having 2 points. Because a line has infinitely many points, there could very easily be another point on this line. When we talk about a line though, we only need 2 of the points. So if you want to call it AB or BA or even AC, CB, you only need 2. Where can I write that? It says right here. You can name a line by any 2 points on the line, such as AB or BA. If you notice in this notation, above it is a little line that extends in both directions. The other way is we use these little lowercase. This happens to be a lowercase l, but you'll see M, N's, all sorts of different letters. We could call it line L. We don't want to just call it L because it doesn't really have any meaning. You need to specify line L. So 2 different ways to notate this line, either with 2 capital letters with the line over top, or use the word in a single lowercase letter. Plane. A plane is represented by a flat surface that extends without end and has no thickness. A plane contains infinitely many lines. Think about it as having 2D. It has length and it has width. With both of these concepts, the idea of infinitely does occur, so the length and the width don't stop. It goes on forever and ever in all directions. Planes are very often drawn using parallelogram, rectangular shape surfaces. When we talk about a plane, just like a line, it has an infinite number of points. There are so many points all grouped together that they form a plane. Couple ways to name a plane. You can name a plane by a capital letter, such as plane P. Look at this P over here in the corner. There's no point. That is put there for the sole purpose of naming it, just like this L is put here for the sole purpose of naming it. That L is not a point on the line in the same way that this capital letter P is not a point on the plane. When we talk about naming planes, you can name it by a naming letter, or you need to pick 3 non-collinear points, meaning 3 points that do not lie on the same line, and we call it plane ABC. You could call it plane CBA. The order doesn't necessarily matter, but what does matter is the fact that you call it a plane. If you were to just call this thing CBA, I would recognize it as you talking about point C, point B, and point A, because remember, a single capital letter denotes a point. Intersecting lines. Intersecting lines are when lines cross. They can cross in any which way. But intersecting is that they cross. They have a point of intersection. Here it's being labeled as a P. There's no special notation. So in your notation column, I don't want you to exit out and say, well, there isn't any. This is how you talk about, or this is how you name those things. You have to use words, and you have to say the intersection of, look, lines R, here's line R, and line S right here is point P. There's no special symbol, any notation, anything like that. The intersection of lines R and S is point P. Or you could just say that line R and line S intersect. Parallel lines, coplanar lines that do not intersect. We'll deal with the idea of coplanar later, but parallel lines for now are lines that never cross. They never intersect. This symbol right here is the symbol for parallel. So when we talk about notation, there is a special symbol for parallel when there wasn't a special symbol for intersecting. So if you draw line L and line M, we can say that, oops, I gotta get my pen tool, hold on. We can say that line L is parallel to line M. These little red symbols indicate parallel as well. So make sure on your note paper that you've defined, you've drawn, and you've notated. Last couple, I think. Collinear and coplanar. Both of these words begin with this word or this prefix co, meaning altogether. So collinear, on the same line, coplanar, on the same plane. Let me read this real quick. Points that lie in the same line are collinear. Points and lines that lie in the same plane are coplanar. So anything that can lie in the plane is coplanar. Any points that lie on the same line is collinear. So let's take a look at some of these examples. Nope, I defined, now I have to draw for you. Collinear. A good example of collinear would be this line down here. I have R, Q, and S. In regards to notation, you could say points R, Q, and S are collinear. There's no special symbol like there was for parallel or like there needs to be for line. We just have to say it like it is. When we talk about coplanar, let me notate coplanar for you. So I'm going to draw a plane, and I'm going to put some points on my plane. So I could say that points A, B, and C are coplanar. Just like with collinear and intersecting, coplanar has no symbol. You just have to say it like it is, but you're still notating, you're still naming what is happening. All right, let's look at some of these examples. And I know you don't have these anywhere, but just kind of follow along. What are two other ways to name QT? Well, let's look at QT. One of the things about geometry is to get your hands on it and really draw it, especially in different colors. So QT is representing this line. Well, I could call it TQ and just switch it. Whoopsies. I could call it TQ and switch it, make sure there's a line on top. I could pick any other 2 points. There's an N way down here. I could call it QN. I could call it NQ. And the other thing, if you notice, there's this tiny lowercase letter. That's there so that you don't need the other 2 points. I could just refer to this as line M. Letter B says, what are two other ways to name plane P? Plane P is this whole thing. So to name planes, we need 3 non-collinear points. I need to write the word plane. This isn't working for me. I need to write the word plane and follow it up with 3 points that do not lie on the same line. The reason why we need 3 non-collinear points. So think about this. If I were to call this plane R, Q, S, your eyes only stay on the line. What it needs is another dimension. RQS only gives me length. I need length and width. So I could call it RQV, and what that has done now is it's taken you off of the line and it's giving you a little bit of dimension this way. So I could call it RQV. I could call it plain VQR. I could even use the S and call it QSV. There are lots of different combinations, but you need to make sure that you are picking 3 points where at least one of them is not on the line. This P isn't even a point, so that's not going to be included. N is not on the plane, and neither is T. This line, TN, is going through the plane. Think about taking a piece of paper and stabbing it with a pencil. This here's the pencil. Letter C, it says, what are the names of 3 collinear points? We don't need any special notation here. It's asking for 3 collinear points. 3 points that lie on the same line would be R, Q, and S. R, Q, and S are all collinear because they all lie on line L. What are the names of 4 coplanar points? They're asking us to list 4 points that all live in the same plane. R, Q, S, and V. I do not need the word plane in front of this particular one because they're not asking me to name a plane, they're asking me to list points. Same thing here. I do not need a line over top because they're not asking me to name a line, they're asking me for the names of points that live on a particular line altogether. And the got it exercise. What are 2 other ways to name line? I read the word line, RS. I could call it QS with the line on top, line L, so on and so forth. Name, what are the names of 3 other collinear points? Collinear means all lying in the same line together. Do you see another line in this picture? It says pencil going through the paper. I see a T, a Q, and an N, all living on the same line. Lastly, letter D, what are 2 points that are not coplanar with R, S, and V? So not coplanar. So I have a plane here, and I have R, S, and V. So what points are not on the plane? Not on the plane with those 3, T and N. M is a lowercase letter. It is not a point. This would be here only to talk about that line going through. I think that takes care of it. The purpose of this video was just to go through some of the vocab. I by no means expect you to have a perfect understanding, but this is a starting point. So you come to class with something. You might have a question. Perfect. I'd love to answer it. And we'll go from there. Thank you so much.